Hello, and welcome to the webinar. If this is your first time using the GoToWebinar platform, the session is meant to be interactive, and you have the ability to ask questions in real time. Let's see how. Asking a question is very easy. On the right side of your screen, there is a GoToWebinar toolbar. Click on the question mark bubble to begin typing your questions. Submit your question in the text field and click the send button when ready. This can be done at any time during the webinar. After pressing send, your question will be sent to one of our panelists. It's important to note that all questions are private and no other attendees will be able to see them. After review by our panelists, the answer will appear right below your question as seen on the screen. If you have more questions, you don't have to wait for others to be answered. Feel free to ask as needed. There will also be a live Q&A session after the webinar. Thank you and enjoy.
Welcome to today's event, Chatbots and AI/ML 2023 Essentials. We're really glad to have you join us here today, and we're looking forward to sharing an amazing hour of learning with you. My name is Nicole Foster, and I am AWS's Global Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Public Policy Lead, and I will be your host here today. We have a great lineup of speakers and sessions for you over the next hour. We're going to start with an introduction to artificial intelligence, or AI, and machine learning, or ML, from Heiko Hotz. He is one of our senior solution architects. Then you will hear from from Thomas Rindfuss, another one of our solution architects, who's going to dive a little bit deeper into chatbots. And then we're going to follow that with a short fireside chat on the responsible use of AI with two of our leading experts, Dr. Nashley Cephas, Principal AI/ML Evangelist at AWS, and Dia Nguyen, who is a Senior Practice Manager for AI/ML Ethics at the AWS ML Solutions Lab. We're going to wrap up with a live Q&A session, so get your questions ready. You'll be able to ask technical experts your questions using the questions feature of GoToWebinar. If you are completely new to AI/ML, you're in the right place. And if you're well versed in these technologies, you're also in the right place. We're going to be covering some of the basics, but also addressing the latest trends so your team can prepare to navigate this exciting space in 2023. So before we get started, I just want to share a little bit more about AWS, or Amazon Web Services, and what we do in terms of AI/ML. As the world's most comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud technology platform, we offer over 200 services, including a wide range that use emerging technologies like AI and ML. When we hear the term AI, it conjures up very exciting things like driverless cars and drones, or more recently, chatbots. And while these are really important applications of AI, they are just the tip of the iceberg. Artificial intelligence is driving innovation in virtually every industry and sector. And while it's still early days, experts forecast that AI-driven productivity growth could increase global GDP by 16% by 2030. From finance to farming, AWS works with customers in every vertical to help them leverage the power of the cloud and AI to realize the benefits of digital transformation. Over 100,000 organizations have used AI and machine learning on AWS from across all regions of the world. They include the NFL and NASCAR, dating apps like Tinder, health and life sciences companies like Bayer and Novartis, and ride-sharing apps like Lyft. A key factor in why these technologies have progressed so quickly is because of the advances facilitated by cloud technology. The cloud is democratizing access to AI and putting it in the hands of developers. Organizations with developers can now start to deploy AI/ML without having direct access to expert practitioners. So access to the cloud means easier access to these tools, and it means that these capabilities aren't just in the hands of experts or large corporations and governments, but in the hands of small businesses and startups too. AI is helping businesses and organizations of all sizes leverage their data in order to improve their operations. And the next vanguard of AI, which is generative AI, is something we're really excited about. Generative AI can produce new, original content that is very close to human-generated content for real-world tasks, like answering questions, summarizing text, or generating images. Generative AI models are trained on massive amounts of data with several 100 billion parameters. And as a customer-obsessed team, we're excited to provide a whole range of flexible options for building generative AI applications through a couple of ways. Through the secure access to pre-trained third-party and open-source models made by generative AI companies like Stability AI, AI21 Labs, and Cohere, and through the AWS-built generative AI model for code generation through Amazon CodeWhisperer coding companion service. Whether it's images or text, chatbots or code, we're excited about what this new wave of AI will bring, while we are ensuring security and data privacy, flexibility of choice, ease of customization, and responsible use. Now, here to give us an overview of some key concepts is Heiko Hotz. Heiko is a senior AWS solutions architect for AI/ML with a special focus on natural language processing, large language models, and generative AI. Previously, he served as the head of data science for AWS's EU customer service team. Heiko, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Hi, my name is Heiko Hotz, and I'm a senior solutions architect for AI and machine learning at AWS. And today, I would like to dive into the topic of AI and machine learning and generative AI with you. Now, AI and machine learning have been around us all the time. If we are on our smartphone and maybe use our voice assistant, or if we are texting on our smartphone and use the auto completion feature, or if we are going through our photo library and use image recognition to find our friends by text search, that is all powered by AI and machine learning. Similarly, if we use smart assistants in our home who use automatic speech recognition, that is also powered by AI and machine learning. And even if we watch TV shows and movies on our streaming services, we do see recommendations. And again, those recommendations are created by machine learning algorithms. And as you can see, oftentimes we interact with these AI systems via language. So that could be text or it could be speech. Now, the fact that we interact with these AI systems via language has given rise to a particular field within machine learning called natural language processing. Now, natural language processing can be roughly divided into two separate fields. One is called natural language understanding, and the other one is natural language generation. Now, natural language understanding is the overall field of computers trying to understand text and speech and provide actionable insights and information from that text. Natural language generation, on the other hand, is all about generating text and speech, and it is a field that we're going to look into later in our generative AI section. So for now, let's stick with natural language understanding. One of the classic NLP examples for natural language understanding is sentiment analysis. Now, just think about if you were a company that has a product or a service, and you would like to understand whether your customers are happy with your service. You could use sentiment analysis for that task. You could take customer comments and review them with a natural language understanding model, and the natural language understanding model will be able to tell you whether the customer comments were positive or negative or neutral. Just as horses were once the primary mode of transportation, these kind of sentiment analysis models represent traditional NLP models. However, in 2017, there was a major shift, and we basically moved from horses to cars. 2017 was the year a new NLP model architecture was presented in a famous paper called Attention is All You Need. And this model architecture you might have heard already is called transformers. And these transformer models were then, after 2017, after the model architecture was announced, these models were suddenly able to surpass human performance in natural language understanding tasks. Now, one of those examples where natural language processing models with the help of transformers were able to surpass human performance is reading comprehension. Reading comprehension, as you might remember from school, is the task of having an article or a paragraph that you need to read through and answer certain questions about that paragraph. So you need to be able to extract the relevant information on that, within that paragraph based on the question that has been asked. Transformer models were able in 2018 to actually surpass human performance in this task. These natural language understanding models would read through that article and they would be able to answer those questions on the right-hand side better than humans do. Now, earlier, we talked about natural language understanding, which we just have seen, and natural language generation. So now I want to dive deeper into natural language generation and generative AI. Now, you heard me mention the quantum leap from horses to cars in the field of NLP. Well, now we're moving from horses to cars to rockets with the advent of an entirely new type of AI, which is generative AI. Generative AI has developed rapidly, and you've probably heard a lot about it, whether it's Stable Diffusion or GPT-3 or Midjourney. Now let's dive deep into this topic and also into chatbots. Joining me for this segment is my colleague Thomas Rindfors, a senior solutions architect on the Amazon Lex chatbot team. So let's have a look. What is actually generative AI? How can we define that? Now, don't worry, I'm not going to read all the text here on this slide, but I think it is worth diving into the first two boxes. I'm actually going to read those because I think they're really important. So the first one says, generative AI is AI that can produce original content close enough to human-generated content for real-world tasks. And that is really the key. Generative AI, you could have generated with AI before 2017, before 2020, before ChatGPT, but it was never good enough. And now we are at this pivotal point in time where AI is good enough that it is almost not distinguishable from human-generated content anymore. Now, the second box is also important, so I'm going to read that as well. So generative AI is powered by foundation models pre-trained on large sets of data with several 100 billion parameters. So it's this term foundation models that I want to highlight here. You're going to hear this term quite a bit in the next few minutes. And foundation models are basically like GPT-3 models that underlie applications, and these applications basically are powered by those foundation models. So if you think about something like a ChatGPT is actually an application and it is powered by a foundation model, something like a GPT-3. So what are some of the use cases then for generative AI? Turns out there's quite a few use cases actually. So from, generating text, chats, all the way to music creation and code generation, there's a whole range of applications for generative AI. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into three of those. Now, the first one is around text. Generative AI is really transforming natural language processing and natural language generation. So here on the left, you have an example where you have an academic article and you just press a button, summarize, and the foundation model that is underlying this application will then produce a very neat and brief summary of the article. On the top right, we have AI 21's Labs WordTune, and that's basically your personal wordsmith. So if you have a text, If you want to reply in an email saying something like, the opportunity interests me, but you want to make it sound a little bit nicer, WordTune will help you to basically put that text, rephrase that text in whatever tone you might want it to be. On the bottom right, we have Cohere's real estate listing generator. And here, you just put in the left a few bullet points about a real estate listing, and then you, again, just click a button, and then on the right-hand side, you have a sample response that you can use right away or fine-tune it if you need to, and then use that for your real estate listing. Generative AI is also transforming the image domain. And you might have seen that already and might have even played around with models like Stable Diffusion or DALL-E. It's basically you give it a text prompt and it generates a new image that has never existed before. So that's what we see here on the left. You can also have image to image. So you can take an image as an input and then transform those images or upscale those images as well to have the same image rendered in a higher quality. The third example I wanted to show you is about code generation. Now, code generation is, to me personally, a very exciting use case for generative AI. And actually, we're going to dive even deeper into that with a video in just a second. Before we do that, what are some of the ways we can use generative AI on AWS? So you can use generative AI services or APIs that are offered by foundation model vendors. So if you go on to a Lensa app or Stable Diffusion, Dream Studio, then you're basically using an API service offered by a vendor. But organizations usually want to have a little bit more control over how their data is used. So we see a lot of AWS customers also wanting to use publicly available foundation models. Now, again, foundation models are these large models pre-trained that underlie all these generative AI applications. And there are many open source foundation models available out there that you can just use and deploy, and you have complete control over the API. And then you could also build your own foundation models from scratch. Now, AWS offers a whole range of AI and ML services for you to get started with generative AI. On top, we have our AI services such as CodeWhisperer that you can just consume with an API call. In the middle, we have Amazon SageMaker, our machine learning platform that allows you to easily deploy machine learning foundation models. And at the bottom, we have our ML frameworks and infrastructure layer that allows you to train foundation models from scratch. Now, I want to dive a little bit deeper into Amazon CodeWhisperer and show you how it works. CodeWhisperer is powered by machine learning models trained on billions of lines of code. The model generates code similar to how a developer would write code. It's not copy-pasting code from the web. Actually, the benefit that you get from using CodeWhisperer is that it is already customized to you. CodeWhisperer understands natural language and generates code based on the developer's intent. And CodeWhisperer can generate entire functions and logical blocks of code, often consisting of more than 10 to 15 lines of code at once. Now, this helps developers write code much faster compared to using traditional autocomplete tools that just suggest one word at a time only. CodeWhisperer is really easy to get started with. Developers simply install the extension in the Integrated Development Environment, or IDE, and then start using CodeWhisperer within 5 minutes. And to give you an overview of how that could look like, let's dive into a demo of CodeWhisperer. So here, in this case, I'm writing some code in the IDE, and CodeWhisperer already understands from what's being written that the developer is writing some Python code and wants to use AWS primitives. And you can see here CodeWhisperer already in action, suggesting some of the most common parameters to upload a file to S3. Now, once that is done, we can define a function that does the actual uploading of the file into S3. And just by giving CodeWhisperer the name of the function, it already knows how to create that code and suggest different options for you. Once you have selected your option, you can just, with a click of a button, paste that code into your IDE and you're done. So CodeWhisperer is one of those API services. But we said also there is ways to use foundation models that are publicly available. The way to do that on Amazon SageMaker is to go via Jumpstart. So Jumpstart is a service within Amazon SageMaker that helps you perform different tasks and use pre-trained foundation models. You can just browse in there, and what you can do is, once you found a generative AI model that suits your needs, you can deploy those with a click of a button. You can easily customize those and manage these models. It's all a white box deployment, i.e. you are seeing the code that is being used to deploy these models. Your data will be kept secure and private in your AWS account. And because you are in the Amazon SageMaker environment, you have all the support for responsible AI and governance. And what do we mean by responsible AI and governance? It's the whole life cycle about onboarding and setting up machine learning users with custom permissions, fine-tuning these models, deploying them to a SageMaker endpoint, and then once these models are deployed, monitor them and see if there is bias or relative feature importance that develops over time. And once you figure that out, you might want to retrain your models, and the whole life cycle begins from new. We're actually going to hear more about AI responsibility and bias within AI in a later segment. Now, the last thing I mentioned earlier, if you remember, there was the API access, then using foundation models. The last part was train your own foundation models. And that is something that research companies like LG AI Research does. They created on Amazon SageMaker EXA1, which refers to Expert AI for Everyone. And they have been using Amazon SageMaker to train a large language model with, I believe, 300 billion parameters to perform really well in both Korean and English. And this model can be used in almost all sectors like manufacturing, research, education, and finance within LG. So that's all I had for today. And now I'm going to hand it over to Thomas, who will speak about chatbots.
Hi, my name is Thomas Rinfus. I'm a senior solutions architect on the Amazon Lex team. In certain cases, you may not always need purely generative AI. You may want to ensure that your customers can perform tasks using self-service features, or you may want to make sure that any responses or information provided is curated and reviewed for accuracy. In these cases, a parallel set of solutions can complement generative AI by leveraging your own content and knowledge bases. In many cases, customers will still also want the option to speak to a live customer service agent. I'll start by introducing what Amazon Lex is and a little bit about its use cases. Then I'll show you our automated chatbot designer that uses AI to create a chatbot based on transcripts of customer service calls. Finally, I'll demo a solution for quickly deploying a chatbot that can be integrated on a website into your contact center using voice, as well as multiple other channels. Customers want to engage as the need arises. They want to simply ask questions, learn about a topic, or get tasks done. Conversational interfaces lets them do this using natural language, on demand and accessible 24/7, 365 days a year. They're accessible from a variety of different channels, and they're becoming more and more effective at meeting our customers' needs anytime. Amazon Lex is a service for building conversational interfaces into any application using voice and text, enabling you to add sophisticated natural language chatbots to your applications. It combines automatic speech recognition combined with natural language understanding. It's natively integrated with AWS services like Amazon Connect, our contact center service, Amazon Kendra for intelligent enterprise search, and AWS Lambda that lets you run code and integrate with your CRM systems and other systems. Amazon Lex also has pre-built connectors with Genesis Pure Cloud and can integrate with messaging applications like Slack, Twilio, and Facebook Messenger. And using our Chime SDK, we can integrate with other contact center vendors as well. The most common customer use cases for conversational interfaces include contact centers, where self-service, intelligent routing, and agent assist can improve the customer experience and reduce costs. Informational bots, often with intelligent search for frequently asked questions, is another common use case. And we'll have a look at an example of that with our Q&A bot solution in a little bit. Enterprise productivity bots can help streamline activities and get employees easy access to the information they need when they need it. With our automated chatbot designer, we can analyze thousands of lines of transcripts and systematically group them to extract intents and related information. We can remove overlaps and ambiguity and present a draft bot design with suggested intents and slot values. Let me now quickly switch subjects to the Q&A bot on AWS solution that I mentioned before. Q&A bot is an open source solution that was started back in 2017 by AWS Professional Services. It allows you to build a multi-channel chatbot, which means it can be used through multiple channels or integrated into your contact center as a voice bot, where it can cut costs and improve the customer experience by answering the most common questions without the need for an agent, or route the call intelligently to the correct agent. Q&A bot also supports messaging as a channel, like Slack, Facebook Messenger, or text messaging. It's built using AWS AI ML services like Amazon Lex, Amazon Poly for text-to-speech, Amazon Translate for optional translations, and Amazon Kendra for the ability to index and answer questions from your knowledge bases like a crawled website, PDF documents, or even direct integrations with systems like Salesforce. One of the best parts of the solution is that it can be deployed quickly at the click of a button without any coding required. Here's a high-level view of a reference architecture for Q&A bot. A user can interact with Q&A bot in this case using any one of the multiple text channels on the top left, or through voice using a contact center like Amazon Connect, Genesis, or others, or even through an Alexa skill. Q&A bot, which is the white part in the middle, then integrates and pulls information from sources on the right-hand side. This can be integrations with CRM systems like Salesforce, or perhaps a crawled website or other documents that can be searched using the optional integration with Amazon Kendra. By default, questions and answers are stored in an OpenSearch cluster. As part of the Q&A bot solution, an administrator gets access to an easy-to-use interface for adding and managing questions and answers. You can add a new question in seconds by just clicking the Add button, giving the question an ID, writing one or more utterances that a customer might ask, and providing an answer to the question. We can use the advanced options to add markdown to a chat response, to add things like hyperlinks or an embedded video. You can also add a separate SSML answer that lets you have a different answer played over the voice channel. Here you can also add SSML tags, which lets you specify how things like numbers and dates are read to a customer. In this case, we're also using tags to add emphasis and to whisper parts of the response. I'll go into a question that I've added earlier to handle requests to speak to an agent. Here you can see that in addition to responding that will transfer the customer to a representative, we can also set a session attribute that can be used in the contact center to route the call to a specific queue. In this case, the session attribute is next action, and it's set to agent. But you could, of course, set any attribute to any value. This makes this a powerful solution for intelligent routing. In addition to just answering questions, you can quickly set up phrases that route to billing, HR, etc. Let's have a look at what this can look like embedded on a website. I've created a fake Department of Motor Vehicles website and added Q&A bot to it using our open source Lex Web UI chatbot widget. Even though I've stored my questions in English, I can now ask questions in any of the over 70 languages supported by Amazon Translate. I'll ask, what is Q&A bot, but in Swedish. Q&A bot uses Amazon Comprehend to detect the dominant language in my question, and then uses Amazon Translate to translate the question into English. It finds the answer to my question and translates the answer back into Swedish for me. You can override the machine translation and provide pre-translated answers for any language as well. I'll use the buttons I've created to continue in English. A customer can type a question at any time, but you can also provide navigation buttons to show categories of questions or specific questions. Let's say I have a question related to driver's licenses. I want to know what Real ID is. Here you can see that I get an answer with an embedded hyperlink for additional information. Of course, I could have just typed, I have a question about Real ID at the beginning, and I would have gotten the same result. I've added buttons here to demonstrate how we can add videos and images to the chat as well. Videos can be a great way to show a customer how to use a specific feature of a product, and images can be a great way to provide a QR code with a link to an app, for example. We can also escalate this chat to a live agent in our Amazon Connect contact center. Let me type in my name here, Thomas Rindfuss. I'll switch to my other window here and accept this chat. You can see that we are getting here the full transcript of the conversation that we've had with the bot prior to transferring to an agent. So this gives the agent a good idea of why this customer wants to escalate to an agent. We can also see that we've identified the customer profile for me, as well as my contact history. Now let's call into a contact center where I've integrated Q&A bot.
How can I help you today?
When are you open?
We have locations in Seattle and Boston. Do you want to know the hours for Seattle or Boston?
Seattle.
Our Seattle location is open Monday and Tuesday from 9 to 5 Pacific time. Do you require assistance with anything else?
I need to speak to an agent.
Okay. Let me route you to a representative who can assist you. Thank you for calling. Your call is very important to us and will be answered in the order it was received.
And here you see we asked the question here of our Q&A bot instance. We could see that we got an answer from that. So answer was true. And then we checked this session attribute here. And since that was agent, we transferred that to the basic queue. And like I mentioned before, you could have, of course, other attributes there. So you could route that to billing or what have you. Amazon Lex continues to drive business value for our customers. National Australia Bank used to spend $70,000 for a minor change in their IVR. With Amazon Lex, they can now make that same change in minutes. They're also seeing a fantastic 97% containment rate for their virtual agents. Wofford Bank saw a 90% reduction in the time it took their customers to perform an account balance inquiry after switching to Amazon Lex. So when you're considering how and when to use AI, you can see that we have a range of options available to you, both generative and non-generative, with key use cases for each. Having the flexibility, that choice, is essential. Some customers want generative chat, some will want a knowledge base, and some will want to speak to a live agent. Now, back over to Nicole Foster.
Well, thank you, Thomas. That was a great overview. I learned a ton in the last half hour. Now, as I mentioned earlier at the top of the webinar, we are very excited about how AI is going to really transform the way that we live and work. And while you've already heard some of the really practical use cases for AI, we do acknowledge that there are some potentially more sort of life-altering decisions that AI could make, whether it's access to credit or access to employment. And so we understand that there is a really huge public interest in ensuring that AI is both developed and used really responsibly. And so at AWS, we are completely focused on these issues and really transforming responsible use principles into practice. We provide tools, guidance, and resources so that our customers can get started and implement responsible AI across their organization with hands-on support and purpose-built services. So we continue to build and invest in these new services to meet your needs, to identify and mitigate bias, improve explainability, and keep data private and secure. This work is foundational to building trust in this technology. And here joining us today are actually two incredible experts that I am very excited for us to be able to hear from today. We have Dr. Nashley Cephas, who is the Principal Tech Evangelist for Amazon AI, focusing on fairness and identifying bias. Previously, she led the Amazon Visual Search team as an applied scientist, launching visual search for replacement parts on the Amazon shopping app. We also have joining us Dia Nguyen, who is the Senior Practice Manager of Responsible AI at the AWS Machine Learning Solutions Lab. She leverages over 25 years of experience as a technologist driving inclusion, diversity, and equity initiatives and guiding organizations in establishing AI/ML operating models that enable inclusive and responsible products. I invite you both ladies to join us on camera. Welcome, welcome.
Hello. Hey.
Very excited to have you both with us today. Just to sort of warm us up a little bit, I'm wondering, Dia, if you can tell us what responsible AI means and why it's important.
I kind of think of responsible AI in this way. There are a number of different definitions that you could potentially find. But one of the ways that we talk about this is responsible AI being an organizational structure, theory, best practices, and technology that also is leveraged in a way that supports the design, build, and operation of AI systems so that we can maximize its benefit while we minimize the risk in areas of unintended impact. And why is responsible AI important? I would say it's important for a number of reasons. For us at AWS, we understand our customers come to us because of our focus on them, our leadership, our depth and breadth of services, and we insist on the highest standards. And so insisting on the highest standards means that we focus on raising the bar in the way that we deliver our products, and as well as helping our customers to be able to use them. We want to provide services and tools that, and as well as best practices that give our customers what they need to be able to meet their needs. And so that's true when we think about this from the perspective of artificial intelligence and machine learning as well. It's a priority for them to be able to deliver products that their customers trust. And the same is true that we would deliver and provide services that they can trust and they can build upon. And so we want them to be able to take advantage of AI/ML in ways to improve their products, to gain efficiencies, to innovate, to tackle previously unattainable problems. And part of that is ensuring that they can do that, or helping them to be able to do that in a fair, accurate, and a safe way.
Thank you. Now, Nashley, can you talk a little bit about how we take that responsible AI from theory into practice?
Absolutely. I love the role that I play, which is the tech evangelist role, which is essentially bridging the gap between the theoretical technology and lots of research papers and publications that contain all sorts of information and theories around how we can better improve our software to be more responsible, and in many different ways, under explainability, having more robustness, in terms of data privacy, and also in terms of understanding if we can have greater transparency. And so it's great that we can do this, as technologists, as researchers in theory, but it's very important to bridge that to the actual applications, to the actual customers. How is this actually affecting end users? And do we have a good handle on sort of the feedback loop of how all these players come back into play so that we can continue to improve what we're doing. And so as a tech evangelist, I love being able to make that connection. And so I know, for example, in terms of transparency, AWS, AI, and ML teams have started creating these AI service cards to be more transparent about the intended use of our models and products and versus the unintended use, and being very upfront about that and documenting that so that everyone is on the same page about what the potential use can be. And so those are the practical things. It may seem simple, but it goes a long way.
And I know that we have a lot of experienced practitioners as well as some new folks on the webinar today. Can you explain explainability? I think it's one of these terms that when we spend a lot of time on AI, we know really well, and I think we take it for granted that other people know what it means as well. Can you just explain briefly what explainability is?
Sure. So I'll start with the application and I'll go backwards with the definition. So imagine that you were, applying for a loan and you feel that you're pretty qualified for the loan, and for some reason you don't get approved for the loan. You're going to want to understand why. You're going to, one, because you may want to, know how you can be better prepared in the future, or two, you may suspect that there is some sort of, malice or ill intent going on with whatever the decision-making process was to decline you for that loan. And so essentially, when we say explainability, we're trying to understand, is the outcome fall in line with a certain set of rules or a certain set of principles that are the guiding principles of how we make decisions. That can be in everyday life. But more specifically, since we're talking about AI ML, because a lot of the technologies and decisions are made via algorithms, we want to understand, is that algorithm consistent with the way it makes those outcomes? And so that's what explainability essentially is. And I can tell you that on the technology side, we use a technology at the core of a lot of machine learning called neural networks. And when you train a model, you're looking at previous data, past history, to understand how to make those future predictions. And so going along with the application, if someone has a certain amount of money in their savings account, if someone is generating a certain amount of money per year in their business account, also if they have a certain net worth or a history of good credit or paying back bills, then you can probably make a good assumption that maybe this is a safe loan. But the thing when it comes to the thing to pay attention to when it comes to algorithms, there are sometimes factors that go into making the decision of and training the neural network that we actually are not sure absolutely how the neural network is making its prediction because of the nature of neural networks. It's a huge network of lots of transactions and computations. For example, we may get an understanding, you may get an outcome that gives you a result that makes no sense whatsoever. That could be the result of a neural network. So there are various things you can do to ensure that explainability is a constant factor, such as maybe you check your threshold, maybe this particular threshold needs to be moved up slightly or moved down slightly. So there's several things you can do on the technology side to make a system more explainable.
So there's a lot to factor in. And so Dia, I know that you do a lot of work directly with customers as they sort of think through some of these complex challenges. And how do you kind of give advice on organizations about where to start and when they're approaching responsible implementation?
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of complexity in this, and it's not necessarily easy by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's easy for us to get started. And one of the first things that we often talk about when we are engaging with customers is one around education. And I know that might sound obvious or maybe unobvious, but ensuring that everyone that is responsible for or has some role in making decisions understands the complexity, the great power and ability that we have with artificial intelligence, but also and machine learning, but also understanding where there are areas of potential risk. And so this sort of learning, this training and education is important because we have people throughout the entire life cycle from a product development perspective, but also from the machine learning life cycle that need to be informed so that they can ask some of the right questions. They can be paying attention to the right things and be looking around corners or understanding where there's area of risk, because this really requires intentional action, right? For us to build responsibly is not something that we should be doing as an afterthought, but that should be baked into the way in which we're developing. And so one of the first things we talk about with customers is actually to establish the kind of training and education that's necessary so everyone understands the way in which AI is being used, can tap into the knowledge necessary to be able to do their part throughout the life cycle, and have the right kind of levels of accountability. One of the other things I think that is important, and when we talk about this, we go across 7 different pillars or areas in order to highlight the areas of potential risk, to understand where organizations need to be aligned. But I think the other piece of this is not to think of this just as a technology solution and a technology problem alone. It's in fact something that really requires a holistic look, much more sometimes strategic initially, for us to be thinking about what impact and what do we need to do to align people, process, and the technology and the tools in ways that we can minimize the risk, the unintended impact, and actually achieve the objectives or the goals that the customer is looking to achieve. And so it requires leadership, alignment and support, right? Any major transformation or transition in an organization requires that. It requires leadership providing the resources and support throughout an organization to be able to have the focus on building responsible AI. It is a bit of a paradigm shift and a culture shift, but it's the same one or very similar to what we've done when we think about bringing in the cloud, right? It requires a shift so that we really can get the greatest value out of that investment and have the kind of real world impact that we want, but do that in a safe, secure, and trustworthy way.
We have just 2 minutes left. Nashley, is there anything you wanted to add in terms of advice that you would give?
I would say the one area to focus in on, I think, that doesn't get enough credit is the area of governance. You can have all these great practices in place on the tech side, on the other stakeholder side, on the customer side, but if there's no one actually holding those people accountable and making sure they're doing what they're supposed to do, then it can all fall apart. And so I think significant thought has to be put into place on how you create these mechanisms to make sure that governance is happening.
Thank you both so much. Really enjoyed chatting to you ladies, as always. So thank you so much for joining on the Fireside Chat. And just to warn the audience, we're about to move to the live Q&A, so get your questions ready. But before we transition to that, I want to just leave you with a few more resources and next steps. We see today's session as one step on your learning journey. So if you would like a little bit more information and want to know where to go next, there are a couple of resources here on your screen. You can access these QR codes and it will take you to some additional resources. In addition to that, if you want to go to aws.amazon.com, you can learn a lot more about CodeWhisperer, Lex, Kendra, SageMaker, and all of the other amazing AI/ML tools that let you build your own applications to meet your own specific use cases. And now I'm going to turn it over to Heiko and Thomas to take on the Q&A. So if you just type your questions in the questions tab, they'll be able to respond to you. So please type your questions in now. That will be it for me for this webinar. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon at one of our other events this year. We have reInvent or Reinforce It coming up, or you can attend another learning session near you. Thanks so much.